walk with me, will you? I just stepped outside of my door into a beautiful spring day and was called to go on a long walk and just felt this emergent, true desire to bring you on a walk with me, and it felt so good. As you may know, I have been burning down structures, systems, protocols, ways of being in the past, ways of running my business, ways of showing up, and have had no idea what it will look like or how it will reemerge, or if structures ever would be something that I lean on as a path to showing up and being of service. And I'm deeply in this inquiry and devoted to creating from a different place. And so it feels so good to be honoring that practice and to have felt this really true desire to connect with you and share. And so for as long as it feels good, we'll do that in today's podcast. And I am committed to nothing more than this moment with you. Meaning, I haven't wrote a newsletter for over a month or created a podcast, and I don't know what it's going to look like next week. And there's something really exciting about that, and there's also something really terrifying about that. And I know that you are experiencing this in your own way because the whole world is. We've all been born into captivity. Essentially, we've been born into these pre-decided structures, systems, ways of being, even been handed the dreams and goals we should have, especially as American women or any race, culture, identity living in the American culture, which feeds us this consumerism, growth, materialism, capitalism structure. And it's all breaking down. and we can avoid that, and we can pretend it's not happening, and we can hold on, or we can really embrace what I've been learning and embracing since my mom died a little over a year ago, that every death leads to a rebirth. And if we're really living our lives, then we're going to kill off and burn off so many things. And if we're able to learn to be reborn again and create not from this cultural narrative, looking to the outside, teachers, influencers, government, guides outside of ourselves to tell us how to do what we want to do, then we start to create from our own inner knowing. We start to create from our own imagination. And if we're going to do that, it requires, what I'm learning, giving up so much. And it's so hard to give up things, especially things that we worked really hard to build. And I made an Instagram story about this. I didn't announce it on the podcast, so if you're like, where have you been and what happened? I explained it in the Instagram story video on IGTV, and which is at Janine.Yoder if you don't follow me. But basically, giving up the structure I've put in place for my business was really freaking hard, because I worked a long time following a lot of rules that took me a lot of motivational personal development support to get myself to implement. Things like creating consistent content, things like trusting my own ideas and ability to be seen, things like sharing my ideas with the world, and doing that in a supported way. I always wanted to have a business that didn't burn me out or run my life, which meant I had to learn to receive support and build teams of support, which includes my household team, and my actual business team. And over the last couple months, through a world pandemic and what was already brewing, one of the biggest realizations I had is that the reason my mom's death and conceiving Violet in the same week felt so immense and so huge is because it was that moment I was learning to break structures. It was in that moment I was learning the truth about the connection between death and birth, the immense emotions we experience with both, and what it takes to grieve and become, to lose and to birth. And as that started, I knew something was coming in my business, something was changing, and I planned nothing for 2020. And I went into it so scared, thinking that in February, when I led the Captivating Feminine Leadership Retreat, I would emerge. I would be back from maternity leave. I would be back into creation. I would create new structures and systems and keep some of the old ones too. But I knew something was changing. And if you followed the podcast last season, you know that I was experiencing this too. But then this world pandemic came, and it really helped me do what I'm not sure I would have done so boldly, so forwardly, so brilliantly, so fearfully and fearlessly as I have. And because of it, I really said I'm going to let members of my team go. I have, like you, not had a lot of the support in my household that I had built these structures and systems around, like having a house cleaner and having someone to care for the girls 3 days a week while I could work those 21 hours and do my mission and build my business. And I've let all of that go. I let all the structures in my business go, and I've just been in this dreaming, creating state, in this state of faith, having this belief in the unseen and the unclear, and having this belief in this divine order of things, both from death, birth, pandemic, burning down the structures, letting go of everything that I've worked so hard to build, really trusting in the unseen order of all of that, and being able to be in private surrender to my own inner knowing as a path for creation instead of looking outward. And luckily, there's nothing to rely on outwardly. So it's like the universe gave me a thumbs up and was like, Jay, you and your intuition and your innovation are in alignment, and what you're bringing is emergence. And, there's this something inside of me is rejecting the way that our world is run. And it's just pressing through my skin. And this new vision has been arising. And one of the ways that this showed up too, I talked to you about, which is crazy given the circumstances we're in, is when I had my daughters, and because of their health issues and my own awareness of personal advocacy and looking into individualized health and what's right for you and not looking to outside authority to tell you what the right move is, I made a decision that getting all of the vaccines for my girls was not the right decision. And this is where this something inside of me started to burn and rage and build. And it was so different than the narrative outside and so scary to share because it's a controversial topic that's not black or white. And it's becoming more controversial, I'm sure, because now we're actually in an age and a time where a deadly virus is spreading, and we're actually beginning to see why it's important to be healthy, why it's important to have practices in our healthcare system that are individualized, and how devastating it is when a virus can spread. And so I think it's waking people up. And also, people are more unconscious than ever because of fear. But waking people up to the idea that we all have different health situations going on, as you can see in this virus and the way that it affects people in different ways. You can see the fear that comes up. So you see why back in the days, these vaccines were created for all these different illnesses, some of which don't have the potential of spreading anymore, and some of which were created out of deadly toxins that we learned years and years later about, but we keep pumping our kids with these vaccines without asking questions. Just like will come the time where, as some of the controversy is present now, if we're rushing a vaccine through, is it okay to mandate that every person takes it? And do you trust that creation process? And do you trust that your individual health has been considered, and that the healthier move for you and society is to use this man-made vaccine? And so, that's where it began for me. And here we are in this pandemic that's really related to that. And some of my activism work began right before we went into quarantine, and it will continue when we open back up and these laws start to go into vote. And I've opened up space in my life and my business to no longer just be solely focused on this work that I do with women, but to actually expand into activism and to play a role in what laws get passed and how we are controlled and mandated moving forward, and being sure that I am, in my work with women, teaching women to cultivate an inner relationship to their knowing, to understand how to have strong discernment and make decisions without being so confused that you just give in and give up and subscribe your life, your health, your livelihood, your potential, your rebirth, your emergence, your death to other people to decide what that will look like, and really help myself through this process and every woman that I serve to start making their vision visible, to start creating from your own inner knowing the structures and systems that will serve you and support you, instead of leaning on the broken ones that are outdated, manipulated, and only really serving a small percentage of our population. And going inside to remember what's real is exactly what I've been up to. And that's been a challenge, to say it's not time to create, it's not time to launch, even though I have so many ideas, you guys. It's so fun to be back in this stage of my work where when I sit down, it's like that antenna from the back of my spine through the crown of my head is like shooting out into the stars and the universe and galaxies and parallel universes, and I am hearing all of the different ideas and things that could be created, and all the things that are asking to be created, some that are outside of my zone of genius, some that are right aligned. And there's this desire to want to do it, to want to create a signature program. I've been talking about the Sisterhood Collective, which is something that's been in emergence and wants to be created. I've got another idea for a mastermind and intimate group coaching program. All these ideas. When you sit at my desk, there are notebooks full of scripted plans and programs and blog posts and audios I've been recording, and papers everywhere in my desk that I usually just crumble up and throw away after and start over. And this is it. Dreaming is part of planning. And so what I've learned and what I'm enjoying, because I've been through this before when I first started my business. In fact, I feel like I'm in this spiral loop around. I've been in business for over 10 years. I have served thousands of women in helping them create successful, sustainable businesses, combining all their gifts and talents, training them to be expert level coaches, and have learned how to run a multi-six-figure business. And now I'm kind of back right where I started, like on unemployment, not sure what I'm doing, a bunch of dreams with no plan. And which is exactly how I felt when I created my first signature program. And so I know from experience now that it is true that your business goes through cycles. You start not knowing what you don't know and waking up to that, recognizing that you want to have a shift and a change. And then you start dreaming and planning, and it's a lot of creativity, it's a lot of uncertainty. And then you eventually get through that stage and it goes into implementation. You take that unseen reality and you start to make it visible and seen. And so I know that there's going to be another stage in my life, in my business, where I'm managing and growing and implementing, and structures and repetitive processes are part of the game. So it's really allowing me to enjoy the dreaming stage more, and to accept that dreaming is part of planning. And my job is to listen deeply to myself and the women that I serve, and allow myself to not be trained by my culture, but instead to train myself. You know, I think about this so much, like how much we're trained by our culture. My daughter, like your kids, if you have them, is probably watching a lot of TV during homeschooling and trying to work from home. I still am running my business, so while I'm burning a lot of things down and taking much less time in my business, I'm still running my signature program. It's sold out, and I am still creating content, and I'm still have a couple one-on-one clients, and so I'm still working. And one of the things that I've been noticing when I work and put Frozen 2 on for my daughter is that we can even notice how much we're trained by like Disney movies. When I think about the Disney movies that I watched as a young girl and what they taught me about women and growing up, were all of these stories of, you know, like Snow White and Sleeping Beauty and Rapunzel, who are like, their mothers are either dead or they get stolen away, or they have, you know, mother figures that try to control them or want their beauty, and they're trying to run away and be saved by their prince. And then, you know, I feel like Ariel was a step up, which is probably why I liked her so much, but she literally gave up her voice to be, and her fins to be with a man. And now, you know, I'm watching Frozen 2 and looking at the training, and it's so much better. And our consciousness is so shifted. And it's also still where we are, right? It's these girls that are trying to rely on sisterhood and find themselves without parental guidance. And there's not that sense of a family unit. Like, one is off falling in love, Anna with Kristoff, and then there's Elsa, who's desperately trying to find herself and learning that she's this spiritual leader. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool that this is what Violet is being raised off of, you know. And then Moana, who's going out and following her passion and going against the grain. But still there's this, you know, I wonder about the wholeness of a family. I wonder about receptivity. I wonder about really being able to come back into community support and not being lone warriors and feeling like we have to save the world by ourselves, because it's still training us to think that we have to do it alone and that that's the path. And I really wonder what will happen when we start feeding and creating the narrative, the vision that I see when I dream and go inward. When I start training myself to think differently, when I start training myself to go off my own inner knowing, what I see is collaboration. What I see is mothers and daughters that nurture and love each other and create a model together in the world of how to show up, and where neither has to limit or lose herself. I see connected communities that solve problems together, so that that warrior nature that we have can be combined into an access that is greater than. And we become powerful in that way, and we become powerful in an independent way that doesn't have us rely on structures that, when they break down like they are now, all our money, all our food, all of our freedom is held within government's hands. And so I'm looking to this idea of not being trained by our culture, but training ourselves with the truth of asking questions, which is why I have always loved coaching, and why so much of my work is and always will be, as far as I can see, in the gift and talent of coaching. Because unlike unpopular idiocracy, I don't know what the word is, making up a word, people think coaching is about sharing advice and like living a life. And I learn and then sharing, what you know with people to help them live a better life. And it's not that at all. That's why I'm obsessed with getting training and having tools and techniques and things that you can rely on to take that inner knowing and bring it into action. And coaching really is about discovering those new ways of being through asking questions. And a great coach is just really powerful at knowing the right questions to ask and why they're asking you those questions and where they're guiding you. And a great coach trusts going really deep and knowing how to hold that depth and that space and that guidance to ask you the questions that allow you to take your coach by the hand and guide them down a path of clarity. And then bringing that clarity into action. Your coach is about being your partner and holding that space of taking that dream from 2D to 3D and into actual action in your life. And it's about, what I've been deeply reflecting on myself and doing over these past couple months is looking at what's the current way of being that I have and what's the new way of being that I need to embody, that needs to be in daily practice. What patterns, what ways of showing up, what things do I think about, and what ways do I decide I'm going to show up? What's my compass for checking in if I'm doing things right? And as I'm looking at all that, what I want you to hear in that is that is what we must do to create a different way. And it actually has to be a consistent, held, structured practice. And so I'm doing that for myself. I can do that for myself because I'm a skilled, trained coach, and I've trained thousands of coaches. And I also have a coach of my own. And I've been learning and creating this new modality based off of some of the modalities I've been trained in. And I've also been using it on a one-on-one client. It's been so fun for me over the past months to have all this freedom to really redefine and look at the models that I use to create big change, to go through change, and then practicing those with a client. So my RSVP model is always to walk your talk first and then to step into the role of the coach. So that's kind of the stage I'm in right now, and I'm actually ready into the next stage of sharing about that modality and letting more people into it. My one-on-one client is going to graduate soon. Not graduate, but she's done in a couple of sessions. And I'm going to take on one or two new one-on-one clients. And I want to share with you what I've been doing. And maybe if you're listening, you might be interested in being in practice with this with me. I have been looking at, what is the current way of being that's not going to get me into my new vision. And I've been deeply dreaming, and my new vision is one where I can truly exist not having to confine myself in structures, which is something I've worn like a badge of honor. So, for example, here's just one example of how much I love structure. I themed out my weeks. So every day had a theme so that I could create balance in my life, so that I could have a really successful business, so I could take really good care of myself, feel good in my body, be healthy, personal development, and then also spend a lot of time with my daughters and have a passionate, amazing life with my husband. These are some of the things that I wanted balance within. So I thought structure is the way to get that balance, and setting goals is the way to get that balance. And so I themed out my days. Mondays are when I serve all my students in my programs, Mentor Masterclass and a Mastermind. Tuesdays are when I show up and lead sister circles and receive them for myself. Wednesdays are all in with my kids, just full on spontaneity into motherhood. I'm all about spending time with them. Thursdays are about being seen, doing interviews and prospecting and marketing and creating in my business from that perspective of getting out into the world, feeling programs, working on launch strategies. I meet with my team on Thursdays. Fridays are about a lunch date and spending time with my husband during the day and connecting with him in our parenting to lead our family. And we would have family meetings and relationship meetings. So these themes, right? And it's the same way I run my business. If you're in any past programs, or you'll know I have my RSVP model. There's a lot of structure and themes that I know guide women through every stage of becoming successful. And in this new vision and in my intuition, I'm feeling that that's not the path forward. So it's like burning down everything I've ever known and then learning to live without structure and still being able to have a life where I move forward, where like I can envision things that I want. Like I want a boat right now. It's so materialistic. It's so a part of my trained vision as a living in this culture that we're in. But I love it. I grew up with having a boat, and I want one for my family and for myself to just go out in the sun and in the wind and in the water and have that kind of thing to do together and to do alone. And so that's a goal, right? It's a goal of like, I have to get my boating license, and I want to get a nice boat. So I want to have an extra $40,000 to just purchase it outright. And so there's like things like that. And then I also have a goal of creating this membership that I want to create for women that's all about sisterhood, deep connecting in playful ways that bring resources, how-tos, and step-by-step guides for women to literally be in circle and have deep healing while also getting all the resources they need to build their business in a done-for-you way. Things I've been wanting to create for years, putting it into this membership. And then I have this idea for this group coaching program, which is all about this transition from current ways of being and patterns that we have, and being able to actually heal those and move through them and show up in the new way that allows you to have the impact that you want to have. So as I'm doing this, I'm looking at what's the current way that's holding me back from that vision. And what came up is this way of working that I assign an archetype to it. When you assign an archetype to it, you can see it and notice it. When you discover how that current way looks to and discerns whether she's on track, you start to see the compass that connects the pattern. And so I've been just deep in reflection of bringing this archetype into my awareness. And who she is, how I define her, is the lone sprinting warrior queen. And she's anxious, and she jumps to immediate action, and she believes that she has to act now and quick and create. Whatever she feels in the moment must be put into immediate action in order to save and survive and thrive. And I'm telling you, that archetype has gotten me so far. There's so much about her that's amazing. And her way of checking is, did she do everything that she could to create safety? Has she done everything that she could to have a great life and protect herself and her family from mediocrity? And what I recognize is that, of course, that sprinting, anxious warrior queen is not going to get me to this new level of activism and leadership and discernment that comes from internal created structures and not the external. If you think of a warrior, they're trained, right? And I'm not looking to be trained anymore. I'm looking to be the trainer of myself. And I want the truest, most beautiful life. And I recognize that is never been promised to be easy. And when I hear a knowing and a whisper, I want to dare to follow it, but not from a place of intensity, because then my whole life has to have that intense feeling. And I'm looking for grace and ease and pleasure amidst facing the challenge that I know that I'll consistently face, because I'm determined to have a beautiful life. And I know that doesn't mean that it's going to be free from challenge, hardship, pain. Probably quite the opposite. Some of the most beautiful lives come from the most challenging, confronting initiatory experiences. And I've already been through this many, many times. I've accepted it as part of my path. But I have also accepted meaning that I need to be a warrior, queen. And I then want to shift that pattern, right? And if you want to shift a pattern, you can't just say you want to shift it. It takes daily reflection, conscious accountability, inspired questions, deep holding, community, mentorship, and your own practice of really showing up to create awareness. Creating awareness is the first step, right? So you can see it, and then you have to work it and shift it. And so that's what I've been doing. And what I'm shifting into, and part of this module and this work, is to then look to the new way that you want to step into, and then create an archetype around that. And so for that, for me, it is the divinely guided Mother Nature Queen. And she listens to divine guidance from Mother Earth, from her inner knowing, and she follows the seasons and the cycles and trusts them. And so there are different flows and inspirational ways, and there are different themes within each cycle to honor. And so from that awareness, from looking to her to be the compass, which checks in and says, am I collaborating with the divine? Am I listening and following that guidance? And let me tell you guys, in the moments of choice, it's hard to break the pattern, and that's where the work comes in. That's where like high level technique and mindset reflection and like really knowing what to ask and how to move is so important. Because when I have time to work now, so we have childcare again. When I sit down to my desk, it's not about what must I create now. It's been about working out and being with my body. It's been about being in nature like I am today. It's been about listening and not acting on that first impulse so that I could marinate in ideas and allow things to incubate and evolve and innovate things that are really new and unique and from inside of me instead of looking outside. And being able to clarify what my own structures are and let those be coming from within rather than trying to cling to original structures that are broken. And so this new way of being is what's helping me to guide and creating a new compass consciously, which took a lot of journaling, a lot of breath work, a lot of body movement, a lot of dreaming, a lot of tears, a lot of tantrums. And I know that there's something that you are feeling called to, and to be able to move toward it, to be able to listen to that intuition, you too need to go through a process of looking at what's the pattern, what's the way that you actually show up, what's the way that you're making decisions, what is what you look for to discern if you're on track or not. Chances are all of those muscles that have been built are not going to work and serve where you're going. And so shifting those is a spiritual practice, but it's also a practice of implementation. It's a practice of taking that dreaming and awareness and putting it into doing, and taking that vision and imagination and giving yourself space to like see it clearly, let the clouds part, so to speak, and then being able to bring it into reality. And then you're probably going to look like me with papers everywhere. And like all those papers are me trying to bring into this dimension what's existing in another one. And, you know, really taking these culturally conducted ideals and making up our own instead. And turning, you know, letting our dreaming be our planning, and then starting to plan and do. And I'm letting myself really burn down that old way of being, and pausing the podcast and burning down the structure of creating free weekly content every week for the thousands of people on my newsletter allowed me the space. So I want to thank you for trusting me to pause and hold off on giving outwardly, because what has happened is I have really moved quickly. In less than 2 months' time, I can say I'm really embodying this new way of being, and as a result of breaking those patterns and really shifting into a different way of discerning and making decisions and practicing the way I work, the way I engage in relationship, even what I think is important, I'm really starting to see this new vision I have of being more in emergent leadership take place. And I have so many amazing things to tell you about that, and just seeing how my business, even though I'm burning it down, continues to be financially successful and hold me, and seeing how I've actually have new team members that have come into place, both in caring for the girls and on my team, just hired somebody. And so there's in the process of all this burning down and uncertainty, there are also little seeds being planted. And part of what's having that be possible is that I've been just owning and honoring the season of winter, which is what, outside of the actual seasons here on the East Coast, my business needed to be in a season of winter. And it's not one that I've ever honored before, because I've never loved the darkness and the death and the destruction that winter holds with sovereignty. And every business needs a time of winter. It needs the time to burn down things and look at the soil that's become toxic from planting in it too much. And I just never was really taught that by anybody. I was always taught launch, grow, create. And that's spring and summer energy. And my daughter, who I named Autumn, because of it being that bridge between summer into winter, that's what she was for me. She was that honoring of equal parts light and dark, and that invitation to really honor a different pace. And it has been so great. So, there's a lot about this state of our world that is quite terrifying. There's a lot that feels so strange to, both want to honor the mandate to stay inside and to trust the freedoms that we've lost in honor of our greatest good. Meanwhile, really not knowing, what conspiracies are present that are waking us up and are real, and asking us to be sovereign leaders onto ourselves, and to also trust our own knowing and not give our rights away. And, we're going to come into some spaces soon, like I mentioned before with vaccines, where we're going to need to learn to have hard conversations and look at the nuance of things, and to recognize that there isn't, like we've been taught, just this black or white way. There's always another way that honors both. There's always other options that we aren't given, and we find those by going into our inner knowing. And so I think if you've spent your quarantine doing that, I really celebrate and give you permission to celebrate too if you needed it. You don't need my permission, but damn, it always feels good when somebody gives it to us, because we're always questioning whether we're doing the right thing, because we were taught that there is a right thing. And that's part of it, right? There is no right thing except what we feel within. And then there is a way that we can disown and dishonor parts of ourselves, which is what we do so often. And that's how we end up doing the wrong thing, thinking we're doing the right thing. And if you haven't been able to have any chance to reflect in a deeper way during this, because you've just been thrown in to the heat of it all, I don't know about you, but here in Connecticut, where I'm living right now, things are starting to open back up today, actually. And, it's innovative. There's like the restaurants have outdoor seating now, and there's new health policies, and it was beautiful. I cried driving down the street just to see like we're opening back up. And it's kind of like a last chance for you to make a decision about whether you're going to step back in to just these old structures because it's too scary to let things burn and die and change, or you don't feel stable enough to be in the unknown, or whatever the story is you tell yourself that makes you limit your capacity. This is the chance to take a moment and say, I won't go into that old pattern. I won't feed into the narrative that I get told how to be and who I am, and therefore being encaged and stuck. There's a great book everybody should read, Untamed by Glennon Doyle. It's so perfect for these times. And, I think this is the chance. This is the chance to say you're going to open your consciousness and your mind to see the path that is neither black or white, but requires discernment from within, that you take that within discernment and turn it into community support, that it doesn't mean you become a lone warrior. It actually gives you the opportunity to converse and collaborate, even with people who have different ideas, different ideals, different beliefs. It's so important that we bring those together and stick together, no matter what they are or how complicated it is to navigate the conversation. Because in this way, we take back control, and in this way, we'll navigate whatever comes forward for our health, our humanity, our world. We need that individualized thinking, and we have to stop placing our survival on one structure that we're all learning is so limited in its capacity, and, so stuck in structural systems that don't honor all. So there's so much for us to do, and so much for us to be. And I've got so much that is coming into planning and iteration that you'll see soon. So I hope that you have had the space to somehow enjoy the breakdown of the structure and trust it, despite how maddening it can feel. And it's been so beautiful to connect with you and walk today. And let us continue to meet and walk forward in those emergent moments. So a couple things that you can do. One, hit reply to the email I sent with this episode today if you're on my list at JanineYoder.com, and just let me know any reflections, any thoughts, any plans, any dreaming, any vision that you're creating that you want to share with me. I'd love to hear it. I really would. I have more space than ever to respond to all of your emails. And if you are interested in being the first to know when any of the dreams that I'm in planning with come into actual reality, you can get on the wait list for the Sisterhood Collective. I will put the link here. And I'm taking on a couple one-on-one clients to go through this new modality that I'm working on, that I've just completed with the client I mentioned. Her name is Shay, and she is an amazing human being, and she has come so far because I've been able to really devote so much time to her. We've been able to do so much so quickly in just 3 months. So much has shifted, and so many of her goals have been achieved because of this work. So I put it into use. I know that it works, and I would love to, while I have this space, I haven't taken one-on-one clients for years because I've been doing all the business things, and I have the space for it now, possibly even bringing a small group of women to do this one-on-one work together and in a mastermind type capacity. So if this is speaking to you, if you know that you are trying to shift a pattern, that you are called to really implement a focus in your life, and you want a structure that gives you freedom but both empowerment to move through quickly, you recognize there's a lot that you want to have and do, and now is the time. I would be honored to work with you. So please send me an email and let me know that you're interested in one-on-one coaching. And we'll see with the newsletter. I do have plans to bring a lot of my team members back on board in July for sure. Well, I'm not going to say for sure because that could change, but I do have some new ideas for consistent content and things I want to share. And I'm not sure if I'll ever go back to promising that it's every Wednesday because it feels good to leave it open. And it felt so good today to know that it was time to connect with you in some way. So thanks for walking with me, listening to the podcast, following along. Thank you for being awake and devoted to being a wild woman who's alive in her ambition and in her self-love. And I'm so grateful to know you and to be with you and to change this world together beside you. I look forward to hearing from you. I hope you enjoyed the walk today. Can't wait to just be quiet and reflect on the rest of my way home. So much love, so much light. I will talk with you soon.